welcome to the Kimbley IT podcast. I'm James, the founder of Kimbley IT, and I'm with Kyle, the Director of Technology, also the underboss of Kimbley IT.
That's right, James, underboss, present and correct.
And this is episode 36, I think, now that we're on.
It is, I know.
36 times.
36. I can't quite believe it, but there we go. We've done it.
Not far off until we get 20 subscribers.
One for one would be good, wouldn't it? But there you go. Yeah, not far off till 20. It's growing. It's going the right direction.
Asking a lot one for one, especially with the quality that we're putting out.
Well, that's only down to us.
Recap of the previous week then.
Yes.
Carl went rock climbing.
Yes, I did. I went rock climbing this weekend with my daughter, Dixie. She climbs everything at home, James, to be honest. Dixie climbs anything, and she climbs all the things you can find at those horrible soft play places that you and I get shoved into sometimes for small children. So I thought, why not take her to a proper rock climbing indoor place? So I did. And her nanny paid for it. Her nanny treated her to it. So we had a proper rock climbing guy show us how to do it. And it was awesome, really fun. And she was great, absolutely great. She scouted up to 12-meter walls, no fear at all. And I was really impressed. I didn't know anything about it. And anybody who's thinking about going rock climbing or wants a sport to try and they don't know what to do, it's a really good one for adults and kids. You go indoors, you don't need to buy a lot of expensive equipment, and it's really easy to have a go because they got all the different levels of complexity and difficulty of wall. I really enjoyed it. You've done it before, haven't you, James? You used to do rock climbing. Did you tell me that? Or
many years ago.
Yeah. But you've done it. So you know what it's like.
Yeah. I didn't find it as interesting as you. Hence the reason I don't do it anymore.
Well, I'm clearly excited because my daughter was good at it, and I'm looking for something that is going to occupy her time. You know, I want to find her something to do. So far, it's looking all right.
Well, if you think I was excited about rock climbing, his main highlight of the week was being able to reconfigure some Unify Wi-Fi adapters at a client's.
Tish, you know why? Do you know why it was so exciting for me, James?
You get to play with command line.
That's it. He's cracked it. He knows. I got back on the command line again. I didn't get to send too many command line, but it was SSH, and I got to send a few command lines. And I also got to work this one out, James. They tell you that you have to be on the phone with Unify support in order to reactivate your AP.
Yep.
But you don't, because I didn't do the third one with their help. All you have to do is factory reset it. Pardon?
You called them for the first two.
I did.
As the third one that you realised you didn't have to.
Yes.
I thought you'd have realised on the second one.
I was halfway into it.
Okay. And
it was an important. We were there that day, and Alistair was doing a few things, and I thought, I don't want to guff it up. Then when it was all settled and I was right at the end, I thought, well, let's just do it. Because I was downstairs and stuff, and I did it, and it works.
Downstairs hiding, the Wi-Fi goes down the whole place.
Yeah.
And I'm upstairs asking me, what's happening with the Wi-Fi? So I have to run down to Carl and ask him, what's he doing?
That was unfortunate.
That's what happens when you experiment on your third device.
No, actually, that wasn't what caused that.
I know. It was just an auto update that went through.
Yeah, it was a setting, actually, James. I thought back to it, and there was a setting that enabled the access points to be more efficient for N and AC clients, to more modern Wi-Fi cards.
Yep.
And when you apply that setting, it reprovisions the units and actually does a restart on them, which it would be nice if it told you. Because other settings in the control panel don't have any effect like that, but that one did.
It was only down for a few seconds anyway. And last week, we released a teaser video for our client stories that are coming along with Mark doing his dance.
That's right.
That many people may have seen. If you haven't, just go on our social media channels and you'll get to see a teaser video for our latest client story, which I'm working on again this week.
Yeah, I think we should resend out the teaser trailer again. I think that should go back out. It's too good to have gone once.
So this week, apart from me working on the client stories, I haven't really got much else scheduled in. We've got some leads that we're dealing with, but that's about it for me. And you're doing something with your airbag in your car.
Yes. Yeah, it is. I bought a car this year, my first brand new car for several years, having been in the world of old cars. And I have found out that my Suzuki has a problem. And if you slam the boot on my Suzuki Swift too hard, it sets all the airbags off in the car. All of them. So there's an emergency recall. So I've got to take my car into Suzuki to have it updated. And while I'm there, I'm going to ask them whether they'll update my Android Auto while I'm there. Since they got the laptop out and they're programming the car, come on, do me auto while you're there.
Yeah, shame it just can't be updated via your mobile.
I know. You bet they'll probably want to charge me, but I'm going to do my damnedest to see if I can sneak it for free. So yes, that's it. Apart from that, I'm back in the garage doing more video work.
Well, our focus section to this week is also about transit. A bit more interesting than your car transit. It's the 50th anniversary of the Apollo moon landing, the first moon landing, Apollo 11.
That's right.
That happened over the weekend. We've put out a blog post about it, focusing on the 5 technologies that came due to the Apollo moon landings. So you got things like the first integrated circuits, which were vital for...
That's one I always enjoyed, the cordless power pack.
Yeah. Integrated circuits were vital for the actual thing to take place, because otherwise it would have been too big, too heavy, the computers.
Yep.
Got the wirelessly controlled pacemaker.
Yes.
Those came from the Apollo moon landings. It was a spin-off of a wireless technology that was used on the Saturn V rockets. Yep, so cordless drills, mainly by Black & Decker.
Yep.
Then got integrated circuits and solar panels. So solar panels were developed for the Apollo moon landings.
There was a lot, wasn't there? There was a hell of a lot of stuff had to happen to make those moon landings occur.
And then shock detectors, which have developed over time to be alarm systems to protect bank vaults, for instance, and vibration detectors that you find in your laptop that detect if your laptop's fallen off the desk. And in the old days, when you had a mechanical hard drive, it would stop the hard drive from spinning, so it didn't get damaged when it hit the ground.
Yeah. It's quite interesting. It's quite interesting how long a lot of those took to hit mainstream from when they were actually invented.
Google did a great video for Margaret Hamilton even. Margaret Hamilton was vitally important inside the Apollo moon landings. She was a software engineer. She actually coined the phrase software engineering. And she was famous for the guidance computer. So she helped with the guidance computer that actually had set up a few alarms when it was in the last 13 minutes of landing onto the moon. The Apollo 13 guidance computer had a memory overload. It was giving, I think it was a 1201 error on the screen. At the time, the guys in mission control didn't know what the cause was for this error. They just saw that actually the computer is doing what it needs to do. It's rebooting itself and it's carrying on course, and they've still got control, and the automated landing is still working. So they still gave the go command, but they didn't work out at the time what was causing it. But it turns out it was a switch that someone had knocked, which had turned on another system inside the lunar module, landing module, which turned on a satellite on the outside, and that basically took all the memory up on the machine. So overloaded the machine, and it came up with an error, and it kept rebooting itself.
It's always interesting to see that, human error. A lot of the time, someone knocked a switch.
It's going back to the Margaret Hamilton. Did you watch Margaret Hamilton by Moonlight? The video that Google has done?
No, I haven't yet.
So what they've done is the Mojave Desert has 1,700 solar mirrors that normally reflect off the sun. What they did is turn them all around overnight, so they were reflecting moonlight, and then they produced an image of Margaret on the solar arrays, and a celebratory Apollo 11 icon next to her.
James?
Yes?
Other things that the moon landings brought to us that are quite interesting as well. The CAT scanner.
Okay.
That cancer detecting technology was used to find imperfections in space components.
Yep.
Freeze-dried food. The joystick, first used on the Apollo lander. And this is one for the Instagram influencers Kardashian generation. Invisible braces. They were made from spacecraft material. Ceramic braces are made from spacecraft material. Smoke detector. Memory foam.
So come on, tell us a bit more about the Apollo. You're a big fan of Apollo moon landings. Let us know about what happened 50 years ago.
I am a big fan of the Apollo moon landings from the very beginning, when Kennedy stated why he wanted to do this, because it was a political move at the start to outdo the Russians, because the Ruskies were looking like they were going to get ahead of the US. They were already into space. They'd already put the first person into space. And the Americans realized that they were going to lose their standing as the world power if they didn't get into space. And they was fearful that Russia would be able to use nuclear attack from space, etc. So Kennedy decided that they were going to go to the moon by the end of the decade of the 1960s. And he puts this forward in the early 1960s. So there's not very long left. And when you look at what that actually meant in terms of the technologies and the engineering that was required out of these people in that short period of time, it is amazing to see what can be achieved when a government writes pretty much an open checkbook to solve a problem. And I love the story of the sheer nerve of the astronauts and the people who flew this craft, that their pure interest was in the development and expansion of the human race into space, and that they didn't care whether they lived or died. They accepted that. These guys were like test pilots, and that didn't faze them in the slightest. If they died, they died because they were doing what they believed in. And the young engineers, most of the average age of the person who worked at command control in Houston was 25 years old. That's really, really young. And you think back to what you were like at 25 years old, and that's a tremendous amount of pressure and skill that was put on these young people at that time in their lives to be able to do this. And I love all the story of how it was achieved, of how they worked together with all these different suppliers to build these components, to build this immense rocket, which if you're ever in Florida, you ever get the chance to visit Florida, you can go to Cape Canaveral, you can go and see a Saturn V rocket. They have one lay down horizontally that you can walk underneath. And it is a mind-numbingly, staggeringly huge rocket. It's just unbelievable. And you walk all the way underneath it to the very end, and you see the capsule that the astronauts sit in, this tiny bit with the payload is on the end, and this great big huge rocket that delivered it. And I find it to be a fantastic story of America succeeding and overcoming and beating the Russians into space.
Now, what one of the most fun facts that I know from Apollo?
Yes.
Apollo 10.
Yeah.
Apollo 10, they were the first guys who orbited the moon.
Yes.
Manned orbit of the moon at 50,000 feet. And to make sure they didn't become the first men to walk on the moon, NASA didn't give them enough fuel for them to be able to do that. So if they got not overconfident, but they got ambitious and decided, actually, let's land on the moon.
Yeah.
Without authorization, they wouldn't have been able to do it because they didn't have enough fuel to get back if they did that.
I didn't know that one, James. That's a good one. That makes sense.
And I'm just reading now about Gemini. So Gemini came before Apollo.
Yeah, that's right.
There were talks about extending Gemini to do Gemini direct ascent, which would be landing Gemini on the moon instead with a man inside it. I went against that clearly. And I'm just reading now that the Gemini was then going to be used as a rescue spacecraft if anything went wrong with the Apollo astronauts while they were on the moon.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a phenomenal achievement, and it was such a shame that in the early 1970s, as is with all these things, public interest in it disappeared after the goal had been achieved. So the public interest was really waning. Unfortunately, they were kind of blasé. Oh, we've been to the moon several times, so it doesn't really matter that much. And of course, it hit around the time of the great the crisis, the effect on the cost of fuel to Americans, Watergate, all of those things, loss of confidence in the American government, funding dropped out the floor, and there was no way it was going to continue onwards, not in the same way that it had been. And it turned into the space shuttle program, which was an adaptation, but there was no intention of returning to the moon. However, that now NASA say is what they intend to do. And they're gearing up for a return by 2024.
So there's two videos that I recommend people watch. There's one called The Real Story Behind Apollo 11 Computer Error by the Wall Street Journal on YouTube. It's about a 15-minute video. Very good. 7 minutes even, but very good video about that computer error.
Yeah.
Famous computer error. And then Margaret Hamilton by Moonlight. Just search for that. That's the Google video that we were just discussing earlier.
Good.
They're both worth watching. And then don't forget to read our blog. Oh, and the other thing that's quite useful that I was watching over the weekend was, I shared your link with you. I don't know if you watched it. Channel 4 was streaming on YouTube.
You did share it.
The moon landings in real time as they happened exactly 50 years ago. So just after about 9 p.m., I was watching them land on the moon for the the first time.
And I
First time for me to watch it live in real time.
Yeah, you shared that with me, but I wasn't able to do that because I was over in Anglesey with my parents and Dixie and Shiloh. So I wasn't able to enjoy that. But it looked like it would have been pretty cool.
It was interesting. I was watching it with a couple of friends, and it was almost like everyone was watching it. Like, we know what's going to happen. We know exactly what's a success, but everyone was just fixated to the TV watching. Are they going to make it? Is it going to land?
Isn't that the essence of a great story when that happens, James? Like, I can watch the Apollo 13 movie and still feel anxious when that moment comes. They come through the Earth's atmosphere. Will they report back? I know the story, yet the way it is directed and presented builds the anticipation and makes you still feel nervous, even though you know the outcome. That's a great story being told.
Possibly. It was good to watch it. It was more the fact that I hadn't seen it before.
Well,
I've seen clips of it, but I hadn't watched the whole thing in real time before.
Well, I'm talking about something that involves emotion here, so that may be struggling for you.
Possibly.
I'll give you one last one on the naysayers online and their didn't moon landing stuff. The one thing that proves we went to the moon, for my money, is the Ruskies wouldn't have bought it if we hadn't. If that had been faked, the Russians would have known and they wouldn't have stood still and not gone themselves. The Russians agreed that it happened, and that's the number one proving point.
So let's move to the news section now.
Okay.
In the news. So I found a good article that came out this morning. It's called "I Kept My Multi-Million-Dollar Business a Secret." So this is on the BBC website, and it is about a guy who created Malwarebytes.
Ah, right. Okay.
Did it when he was 18 in his university room. He knew it was a great program when he actually he was experimenting with viruses on his computer in his dorm room, and the dorm IT security detected it, and they locked his internet connection down and wouldn't let him go back on until one of their guys had been on the machine to clear the virus out. So one of their computer guys came along, about the same age as him, 18, went on his computer. He watched as the guy navigated to the Malwarebytes website to download the software, install it to remove the virus that was on the machine. He kept quiet, didn't tell him that he was the owner of it, but from that moment on, he knew Malwarebytes was a big program, well respected and well liked when a computer technician came in and did that for him.
Yeah,
it's worth a few £100 million now. The business is. He's 18 and he partnered with somebody that he met on a messaging board about internet forums about viruses, known bugs, and things like that. This guy was 35 at the time. They didn't meet for the first 12 months. They met after they made their first million for the first time. And he said, it was a bit anticlimactic in the end because we've been speaking to each other so regularly online that we just shook each other's hands and carried on, and they're still in business to this day. And that's Malwarebytes. Everyone who's in the IT industry knows where Malwarebytes is. I don't really use it much anymore, but I used to use it in the past when I was doing residential computer stuff and having to remove viruses and stuff like that. Malwarebytes was always a good one to use and go to it. So their turnover is now 126 million. And they've got 750 employees globally.
Yep. Smart guy.
Yeah, he's from Poland. He was going to drop out of school to focus on Malwarebytes because he'd fixed it up beforehand. But he says up here that he had he went to talk to his mom and that he wasn't going to be going to school, and 10 seconds later he was in the car being driven to school, so off to university. So his mom forced him to go to university, and he went along with it, and he kept it secret. No one knew about it. No one knew about it that he owned this big, successful antivirus bit of software until later on.
Good for him. Most people would be out there flexing and showing off.
Yeah,
I used to use that product, James. You're right. It was the one. It was a kind of like if you wanted to go to standalone product that you could trust. That was one of the ones you'd download.
Yeah, it went through a bad period in 2014, and that's probably when I stopped really using it that much. And it had a bug where it was doing loads of false positives, and it took down. He says here 911 emergency call centers, hospitals. Lots of things went down. It was quite a risky time because an antivirus company is based on trust, and if you lose that trust, you lose everything. So they then built a team called the Malwarebytes Extinction Prevention Team, and their job is to make sure there are no false positives. That's where a antivirus product thinks that a file is a virus when in fact it's not, and it's a perfectly normal file that's not doing anything, and the antivirus removes it from your machine and therefore breaks your machine. So that's what a false positive is.
Yeah.
And yeah, so doing well, and they're still going strong at the moment.
Good stuff. That's a good story.
I thought this one was interesting. It's another BBC one. AI solves a Rubik cube in 1 second. I'd like to see a video of it. I wonder if it's a digital Rubik's cube rather than a mechanical one.
I don't know. I think it might be mechanical.
But it's on it. Well, there's some people that have done it like so in 20. Yeah, it must be because 2018 researchers built a robot that solved the puzzle in 0.38 seconds. So this must be. So this is AI does it in 1 second. So I imagine that's a digital Rubik's cube because of the researchers in 2018 who built a robot that does it in 0.38 seconds, which I'd say is more impressive.
Yes.
So I'm not really too sure why this has become a news story actually when I've read that part. Okay, AI's done it in 1 second. Back in 2018, some researchers built a robot that does it in 0.38 seconds.
Let me hazard that if you mention Rubik Cube in a news article, it probably gets eyes.
Probably does. But I guess it's probably the same thing. The BBC guy wrote this article thinking that's awesome. And then he checked the archive afterwards and saw, there's this robot that did it in 0.38 seconds.
Yep.
So yeah, that article was good when I first saw it and read through it, but I've just noticed that line, it's crap, so I don't recommend anyone reading that one now.
Did you do the Rubik Cube as a kid? Were you able to do it?
Yeah, everyone can do it. I can't do it in a second, though.
Everyone can do it.
Could you not do a Rubik's Cube?
No.
Have you never completed a Rubik's Cube?
No.
You just haven't given it enough time.
Probably.
If you give a Rubik's Cube enough time, you will complete it.
Right.
Because it's just combinations, and you're just going through the combinations, and you will get the right combination in the end. It's like a padlock. It's just more complex than a padlock. Padlock, if you go through all the numbers that are available, you'll get the code in the end, and it's the same with a Rubik's Cube. Give it enough time, and you'll get it.
There must be a lot of combinations for a Rubik Cube to randomly do it.
Yeah, it'd be a power or something, I imagine, but I don't know what.
Did you solve it randomly, or did you solve it by understanding what the pattern is?
Well, I guess it's a bit of both. You start to get a pattern come through, and then sometimes you're going, I'm not getting any further, so you mess it up slightly, and then you can move on a bit further along the cube.
I understood people who do it. They look at it, and then they can work out it's X number of this way, that way, this way, that way, turn it. There's a number to it. It's a sequence.
You can get to a point like that, but then you might sometimes get to a point where you can't see the next one in the pattern, and sometimes messing it up slightly helps.
Okay. I couldn't do it as a kid, no.
I have to get you on and see if you can do it now.
I think the chances of me being more intelligent at 45 than I was at 15 seem slim, but you never know.
Well, we've got two news articles that you've put up now, so you let us know what they're about.
I was looking at the new Google Pixel 4 phone, and this has gone for a slightly different design from Google. They have put that big bezel on the front of the phone that a lot of people recently have got rid of. A lot of Samsung phones have got the camera is almost invisibly in the glass, and then Apple famously had a notch. Well, this phone's got a great big black bezel at the top of the phone for multiple sensors that Google are going to be putting in. And I'm quite intrigued to see what this phone will actually look like when it's finished, because Google are breaking with the trend here. The trend and the norm is to not have any kind of distinguishable bezel or height on the front. It is all glass and completely the screen. Google have gone against that, and they've put a clearly distinguished big gap at the top where there's lots of sensors. So that suggests to me lots of cameras.
Well, the thing with the Pixel is the Pixels have always had a big bezel. The current Pixel 3 has a big chin at the bottom for no reason. On this, it says that it probably might be using some motion sensing technology.
Yes.
That Google's been developing, which uses radar to detect fine motion above.
Yes.
So it could be a bit more like, what was it, Magic Leap, I think it was called, where you could control your computer with your hands. You had a little sensor in front of your monitor, and you could wave your hands around and control it that way.
Right. Okay.
It was meant to be the next big thing, but it never really took off. So maybe it's a possibility that you can control your phone without actually having to touch it. Maybe like when you're in the car, you can just swipe your hands left and right in the air. I know some phones do that with their cameras, but they're not very good. So with radar, that's going to be far better.
Yes, it looks interesting to see what that will turn up, what that will be.
Problem with the Pixel phones are if you're going for a Pixel phone, you're basically agreeing to be a Google test dummy for free. Well, you're actually paying to become one. So that's why I don't go with the Pixel phones anymore. I used to go with all the Nexus phones when they were doing the Nexus series.
Yeah.
The problem with the Nexus phones and what the Google Pixel phones have inherited is every so often they'll do an update, a significant update, and it always makes the phone worse. It always makes the software slower or a bit more buggy and things like that. And I had enough of having, after when the Nexus phone, they stopped making Nexus phones, I gave up on being a beta tester for Google because I'd really had enough of it. There's hundreds of times where I'd be on holiday, want to take a photo quickly of something coming along, you'd open the photo and the photo app would crash out, can't find the photo, can't find the camera and things like that, error messages, and you have to restart the phone. By the time you've restarted it, you've missed what you wanted to take a photo of. And then there were lots of other little bugs that you get on the Nexus devices. And speaking to people who've got Pixel phones, exactly the same experience. So it's not, Google want the Pixel phones to be their equivalent of the iPhone, but it's not. It's just it's become another test bed for unwitting people now to end up testing stuff for Google. At least with the Nexus devices, you didn't have phone carriers offering contracts and deals on them. You made the choice to go and buy that device.
Yeah.
But now that you can go into any mobile phone shop, because anyone who doesn't know anything about phones isn't buying it online. They're going into a mobile phone shop to get their phone sorted. Yep. And they're coming out with Pixels, which aren't great phones. They start off amazing, but then they degrade over time. Typical of all Google hardware.
Will they ever learn?
Well, clearly not. Pixel program went on for about 6 or 7 years. Then that was retired, and the Nexus program, and then that was retired, and they brought out the Pixel program. So it looked like they were going to do something different with the Pixels when it first came out to be a competitor of iPhone, but clearly they haven't sold enough numbers of Pixels to keep the interest in competing against the iPhones. They're making it into more of an experimental device again.
Well, it sounds like that's what they're continuing to do with this then, James, from reading that. And it's a sneak preview. No one really knows fully, but it sounds like it because it's full of things that are different.
Yeah, exactly. And the other things are, there's some silly stuff that they do with the Pixel phone. So, for example, Google I/O last year was all about digital well-being. It was the year before as well.
Yeah.
But the digital well-being app for your phone, an Android phone that Google only works on the Pixel phone. It's only a software app, but they don't release it to any other versions of Android.
Right.
If they really care about digital well-being,
yes,
and Android having billions of devices out there, you'd release it to all the other Android devices, not just your Pixel one.
That makes a lot of sense.
It isn't it's not exactly a feature that you base your purchase on, digital well-being.
No, not really.
So tying it to a Pixel isn't great. Anyway, let's go on to the next story, which is another one by you. Police will struggle to track criminals by 5G. BBC Technology news story.
That's right, yes. The police have already stated that they're going to have trouble carrying out surveillance and wiretaps and other things that the police use on 5G. And this isn't because you can't do it on 5G, it's that the police don't have the technology to do it. So basically, this is an article saying that the police don't have any new equipment to work on the 5G networks and they're stuck with all their old stuff, which makes a lot of sense. I know you don't necessarily watch some of the TV shows that I do, but sometimes I like to watch the 24 Hours in Police Custody and shows like that. And if you keep your peepers open when you look at the computer screens they're using, the police computer systems look to be fairly old. Lots of Windows 7 going on in the background and things like that. You can never quite tell when the police make a statement like this, whether it's true or whether they're pushing back against the government, because the police force and the government never see eye to eye. And the police force and journalists don't see eye to eye.
Well, it sounds like here it says their complaint is that 5G networks need essentially a lot more elements, modules, receivers, transmitters, and that's where the problem is for them anyway.
Yes.
Getting access to those devices to be able to do surveillance.
So I was jokingly suggesting that criminals who want to misbehave need to move onto the 5G networks as soon as possible, because that's making it much harder for anybody to detect them on there.
No, criminals who want to misbehave and want to be clever about it, you don't take your mobile phone with you when you're about to commit a crime.
Well, yes, you're referring to what are you referring to there? Hatton Garden again?
I'm just referring to general common sense. If you're going to do something bad, don't take a device on you that's going to track you.
Well, that would make a lot of sense, yes.
So, if you're a serious criminal, you already know that. If you're an amateur, there's a bit of advice for you. Don't take your phone with you.
Indeed.
Because you will get caught.
Police forces complaining again that they don't have enough technological equipment to do what they need to do.
Oh, this is fun. The rant section. I forgot that this was what the rant section was going to be. I've been ranting about it a bit earlier, and now I have actually selected it as the rant.
Oh, you're in luck with that, aren't you? Because you've certainly, this one's done your head in.
Yeah, so we've recently moved banks. I think have we spoken about this before? I think we've had a rant about this before.
I'm sure we have, James, but this was we have done, but it wasn't so bad. This time it's got worse and worse though, because we believed it was going to get better, but it hasn't.
Yeah, so we're in the middle of doing a bank switch, and I've had another PDF sent through that I have to print off because it's not an editable PDF because it needs to have my signature on it. And if I try and insert a signature into the PDF, my signature isn't transparent, so it blocks out stuff on the PDF. So in the end, the only way to do it easily is to print it off, sign it and scan it back. But that's a pain, absolute pain that even people expect to do that. And the fact of the matter is they've sent a form as a PDF, and that's an incorrect way to send a form. It's like sending a form in a Word document. It's an incorrect way of sending it. A form should be sent via specific form software, Google Forms, Microsoft Forms, any other type of form software that you can fill in online, can upload my signature or apply a digital signature, like similar to how DocuSign does it, and send it back. It's just nuts because this is just A4 paper with writing on it, terms and conditions and stuff like that, and it's completely and utterly pointless because when I do send it back to them, I only send the pages back that I've signed. I don't send the whole document back because I don't want to print the whole bloody document off. I only print 2 pages off that need to be signed and then send that back to them.
Yep.
So there's literally no excuse for this because we're going to be moving to Monzo Business Bank when they open their business banking because we use it for personal banking. We have no issues at all. Doing a banking switch is easy. It's just through the app. You just enter your old account number, sort code. They go off to the banking switching system or service, whatever it's called. They check that those details you've entered are correct. If they're fine, that's it. They get on with the bank switching and tell you when it's done. The account has been switched over. But with this bank that we've moved to, the Metro Bank, who claim that they're revolutioning banking, it's complete and utter nonsense. It's just as bad as any other bank.
No difference between using
no difference. Yeah, exactly. Even their online banking portal is, I suspect, some sort of skin, I think, of like the NatWest Bank or the Nationwide from when I've used them in the past. It's a pain. That's a pain to sign into because you've got to go through username, password, passcode, what digit, all that kind of stuff. There's no just enter your username, password, and we'll send you a text with a code on it for you to enter or use your authenticator. Nothing like that.
That really bugs me, James, because it asks me for letter numbers 1, 8, and 7 from my code, and then 1, 2, and 10 from my password. And I've then got to go into my Bitwarden vault to find those, and then remember what they are and type them in twice. It is super frustrating.
And the worst part is that we're technically minded, and that's annoying us. Just imagine if that's basically bad password experience, which is forcing people to use weaker passwords. Because if you're using personal banking or even business banking, you have to enter that all the time. You're naturally going to pick a weaker password, an easy code, maybe like a sequential code or something like that. You can just remember what the numbers are and what positions they are in to type them in quickly and get into it. So there's nothing revolutionary about this bank at all.
No, I absolutely agree with you. But we'll stick with it. And when Monzo comes out, then we'll move. That's different. That's all pretty much done through an app.
Yeah, it's the future of banking. Monzo's probably the best one out there, especially when it comes down to personal banking. And they're launching their business bank accounts soon, but they seem to win on everything when it comes down to personal banking.
Yeah. Yeah,
so can't wait for that.
The old banks don't want to change, and I pretty much think that they won't change, even though they've got the money, because their systems will be so old. They'll still be running stuff from the 60s and 70s in the back end somewhere, and they don't want to go through that whole process.
And then you've got banks like Metro that are pretending they're a modern bank when they're not at all.
Yeah.
Far from a modern bank. Literally, the only modern thing they do is rather than calling their locations bank branches, they call them stores.
Yeah. It's a bit rubbish, that really, isn't it?
Yeah, that's pretty much the only modern thing they do that I can see anyway.
Yeah, they are very much all facade and no substance.
Completely.
So warning out there, if you want to use a modern bank for your business, there really isn't any choice at the moment except Monzo, and you'll have to wait until they start
Well, no, there are other ones. You've got Starling and there's another one that begins with R, but I forgot what it's called. There are another one. Starling has already got business banking out. Actually, Starling started as a business bank and I think is now doing personal banking as well. While Monzo started as personal and is now going to do business banking. So there are a couple of modern future banks out there, app-based banks. You can already go for business. We're going for Monzo just because I personally use Monzo and I like it a lot. So I imagine their business banking is going to be just as good. So we're holding out for that.
Good. Okay.
So just on to our recommendations now. You got any recommendations? I'm going to recommend a podcast that I recommended before, just because it's relevant. 13 Minutes to the Moon.
Yes.
It's all about the Apollo moon landings. I've actually started listening to it now. I hadn't listened to it before. I recommended it to you last time.
Yeah.
But I'm on episode 4 now, and it focuses on the last 13 minutes of the landing process to the moon, where a lot of action takes place, where that computer failure that I mentioned earlier happens, and how they dealt with that, and just the history of the Apollo moon landing. So episode 3 has recently been about Apollo 1 and the fire that took place on the testing in the launch zones, and how that killed 3 astronauts inside there, and how it completely basically rejuvenated and redesigned the Apollo missions. If that fire hadn't have happened, Apollo would probably not have been successful, because they'd have kept with their bad ways of doing things. They call it go fever, where everyone wants to go and no one wants to abort or say, stop, we need to relook at this. And it got their whole processes. They redid the whole processes NASA did for testing rockets, testing capsules, testing life support systems. Made them rethink on actually, okay, we can cut weight by stripping electrical wires down to the bare minimum, but then we are going to have problems with potential of cables breaking and sparks happening, and things like that, and got them to rethink the whole plan for Apollo from the Apollo 1 disaster.
Yeah, it is a great podcast, that, James. You recommended it to me. I've listened to it. It's excellent. There's been a
BBC World Service, so it's good quality.
Yeah, there's been so much stuff to listen to around Apollo missions in the last week or so. It's been crazy. There's been so much good stuff to watch and listen to. Really good. I haven't been too much. I've been watching YouTube more than anything recently.
Okay.
And Think Media is a good YouTube channel that our friend Finson at Damson Cloud put me onto when I was asking questions about using DSLR cameras.
Okay.
For audio and lighting and things like that for video. And Finson told me he learned a lot from this guy at Think Media. And he's got a really good YouTube channel all about that kind of stuff, all about how to do video at home, what good cameras are, how to do your lighting, sound, all that kind of stuff. And he's really nice, really good American guy, really easy to listen to, good educational, plenty of links to the products that he uses. And I find his channel really easy to watch and learn. That's a good channel, Think Media.
Good stuff.
The rest of the stuff that I've dipped in and out of, I've just been back in LGR. You know, when you get into something, James, and you stay in it, I'm still in LGR watching loads of those because there's so many of them.
LGR is a YouTube channel. Everyone should subscribe to it. It's about retro computing now.
Yes, it is now. Yeah.
Yeah, so you should really get onto that.
They're
retros.
You've got to say, wherever he is, or thrift shops he goes to in America, they definitely carry loads more old gear than we keep in charity shops in the UK.
I don't know. I've been to a charity shop for years and years and years. I don't think I've ever been to one.
We go to them quite regularly, and I'll tell you the reason. Why. Sometimes it's to buy clothes to the girls because they grow out stuff so fast. You get quite nice stuff.
Yeah.
Like someone will give a really nice Marks and Spencer's dress for a girl, and also the girls want a little present. A charity shop's a great place to get a toy that costs 10 quid or 20 quid, a fluffy toy. Get it for £1, don't you, in the charity shop?
That was lucky. I'm glad you said £1 because I was thinking that's pretty pricey if it's 10 or 20 quid in the charity shop as well.
If you went to Smith's, you'll get we picked up Toy Story toys. And my girls destroy them so fast, I might as well get them from the charity shop.
They're fine. I haven't seen any retro tech for a long time. There used to be a shop down in Digbeth that did retro tech, closed down, but it was a shop that was opposite our old office that you never experienced, but it was a retro computing shop. And you go in there, it has SNESes, the games. It has, sometimes you see some old Atari stuff in there, some old Commodores and things like that. But it closed down.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I was looking the other day for the Ghosts and Goblins arcade machine because I really liked that one as a kid. And at one point, those things went crazy expensive, but they've actually come back down again in price.
Yeah, they fluctuate. They're like a market.
Yeah, they're definitely not in the height of their market at the moment. In fact, this guy got an arcade machine and he reduced it to $299 now.
Did you see the Lazy Game review video of Computer Stop? That's the big warehouse he went to, which had tons of IBM stuff.
I haven't watched that one yet. No, I haven't watched it yet.
Because while he's waiting around, he gets invited into someone else who follows his channel that's nearby. It's a guy who privately collects arcade machines, and in his house he has a massive, ginormous warehouse essentially that he's fitted out as a computer arcade, and it's all got retro arcade machines in there and stuff like that. This guy collects.
Right.
And then again, later he goes on to the Computer Stop shop, and you see all this old IBM stuff that was like boxed in the 1970s and 80s and has never been unboxed since. Tons and tons of stuff in there.
Okay, I will watch that one. I've seen it, but it's quite long.
He opened one box. The one box was full of fully boxed 3M old tape reels.
No way.
Yeah, that you stick on like you see on the where you got two of them running like a data tape reels and stuff like that.
I'm convinced, James, that Americans hang on to stuff way more than we do. Like in the UK, if you tried to find warehouses full of stuff to pick, like all these TV shows, you can't really find it. America seems to be full of it. I mean, I know it's huge. It's much bigger, and maybe it's just that, the law of averages. There's more of them, so there's more stuff.
It might be just that no one looks in the UK.
I don't know. Yeah, maybe you're right. I don't know where you'd go. Good point.
This was just a private shop anyway. It's just a private shop that some guy had been running for a long time. It's ill health, and that's why they were opening it and getting rid of stuff. And I imagine there are plenty of shops around that in the UK where some old guy lives in there.
Yeah.
He's got tons of stuff in there, doesn't know what's in there anymore.
Yeah.
And it's just until he dies, and then someone comes in and cleans it out. Because there's tons of people that are not collectors. What's the word? People who hoarders. Yeah.
I know what you mean, James. You like the guys when they go, they've got all the old cars because they just never got rid of them. They just shoved them in a warehouse. And
yeah, exactly. Yeah, you find them all the time.
An old Porsche or something like that at the back.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe you're right. I'd love to have a go at some warehouse like that full of computer kit. It'd be a lot of fun just to see what was in there. It'd be fascinating.
I recommend everyone goes and watches that episode of LGR on YouTube.
I'm going to, yeah. Watch LGR again, guys. It's a top YouTube channel and a nice guy. I was going to wind it up then, unless you've got something else to add. No, I was about to say, I think that's it.
Cool. That is it. And,
it is.
Follow us on social media, connect with us, give us a thumbs up, tell your friends all about us, and then maybe for episode 37, we might have more listeners and some more content to talk about.
There's always something to talk about.
Just got to make it interesting. That's the key.
Yes. Well, 20 people think it is, so that's not bad.
So we'll see you all next week.
See you later. Bye.